Okay, we've talked about building a fan base, but now, how do you actually find those fans? Where do you find people who are interested in the particular project that you want to build? You can't just walk up to strangers who are just in a crowd and say, hey, I've got a Kickstarter project, pay attention to my project. Now, what you have to do is you have to build a fan base over time, and you have to go find the people where they're gathered and then draw them in. But first, as the old adage goes, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Yeah, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche that works. So what you need to do is you start to go to find these fans, go find where they're located. That would be Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, LinkedIn, and all of the other different social networking sites that are out there, because that's where they are, and that's what you have to do first to go find these people before you launch your Kickstarter project. Let's talk about some specifics. Because when you start to go find fans and to bring them in, it can be really hard. Oftentimes you don't know these people, and you're trying to convince them that what you've got is interesting to them and that you're interested in them, and that can be difficult. So let's start with Facebook. One of the things that you want to do with your Kickstarter project is the first thing is create a Facebook project page, and you want to do this about 6 months before you launch your project. That means you've got to think about what you're going to call it, and you've got to have it really well thought out. Now, when you create that Facebook project page, now your goal is to think of it as a mini trial run for attracting interest in your Kickstarter project. Because now you're going to tell people, you have a Kickstarter project coming, here's what it's about, come to my Facebook page and like me. That will give you an indication, a litmus test of the strength of your social network and how powerful your reach is to bring fans in. Now, realistically, they're not all going to become financial backers of your Kickstarter project. But you should be able to, at this point, to get a reality check. Are you able to reach out to people and convince them, friends, family, and strangers, that what you have is interesting enough that they should not only come and like it, but then they should tell their friends about it? Because that's one of the secrets, is that social media, when you build your Kickstarter campaign, you need their networks. You need your network to push your project to their networks. And this Facebook project page is going to be one of the first tests to see if you can do that. Fairly straightforward. Go out to Facebook/username, I think is where you go, and then you go and pick a project name for your Facebook page. You can either create it as a group or an actual page of a product. Get it up there, start inviting people, start updating it with content, and pretend that it's its very own Kickstarter project. That'll be a great way to start and see if you actually have a lot of interest. Okay. Let's talk about Google+. You might not be as familiar with Google+ because there aren't as many members of Google+ as there are of Facebook. But Google+ is an extremely powerful social media tool that you need to learn how to use before you launch your Kickstarter project. And let me explain why. Google+ is similar to Facebook, where you can create a group and you have followers and kind of the +1 and liking and all of those type of things that you're familiar with. But one of the things that Google+ does is that if you create a project page for your Kickstarter on Google+, and you get your friends and family and fans to like it or to +1 it, this is what happens. The next time they do a search on Google that has anything to do with your project will be inserted invisibly, well, invisibly is not the right word, but automatically by Google into their search results, reminding them of this project that you have. So long before your project gets kicked off, you want to make sure that you're seeding the potential market of those people interested in your topic, that they're seeing it, they're talking about it, they're plussing it, and they're sharing it with their friends. Pinterest. All right, Pinterest is a lot of fun. You get to put pictures up there. You got to have a lot of fun with Pinterest. But one of the things is that so much of what we do and so much of the reason people back projects is because of what it looks like. Pinterest is another good litmus test at how well your project is going to do when it comes to the visual. Create yourself a Pinterest account tied to your Kickstarter project that allows you to start building a fan base around the art and the creation of that art, and you put that up on Pinterest. Then you'll see how compelling is my story, because will other people start to share and pin those images and photos of what I'm trying to build? It's another great litmus test. All right. Probably, though, the most powerful of all the social media that you want to take advantage of is Twitter. And I know, based on my experience, that you're probably going, Twitter? I don't even know what Twitter hardly does. Twitter is not a megaphone that you use to shout to the world. Twitter is an opportunity for you to conduct a two-way conversation with the world based around a series of interests that they have and that you have. So this is what you need to do. You need to go find the most influential people or a large number of influential people in the subject of your Kickstarter project, and you need to start following them. And then you need to listen, and you need to retweet some of their comments. And maybe you need to comment every once in a while. But what you need to do is start to build up a base that people judge you on. How many backers do you have, and how many people are you following? And that has to be built up over time. It's almost impossible to shortchange that. And over time, then, you start to build up a reputation of somebody who's reputable. How many times? I don't even know how many times. I see a Kickstarter project, I go and look at their Twitter handle, and they've got 2 followers. I know it's not a popularity contest, but it's a popularity contest. And if I look at somebody who's got a Kickstarter project and they've only got 2 followers on Twitter, it just tells me that they haven't done a good job of reaching out to the network. Now, they might have a whole lot of friends that don't use Twitter, but I'm telling you, if you want to reach out to strangers and find people who you can communicate easily, communicate with them first and do it through Twitter. And that takes time. How much time? About 6 months. Literally, I'm serious. It takes 6 months to start building your fan base and reaching out and finding these people, because that's how long it'll take to build up your Facebook fans, to build up your Twitter followers, to build up your Google Plus reach, to build up your Pinterest followers. Something I haven't touched on, YouTube. YouTube is the 2nd largest search engine on the internet behind Google itself. That means you should be putting videos out about your project long before your project's there. Create a faux documentary about the creation of your project and get people to start watching your videos and following your feeds, so that, again, you start building a base of people who know you, talk about you, and see what you're doing. Trust me, you don't have to be an expert videographer. You don't have to be perfect when it comes to filming. I'm not. It only looks that way because I have a really good partner who is a professional videographer. But you don't have to do that. Sometimes just being authentic and genuine is enough to get people interested in what you're doing, and YouTube's a great way to get your message out there and have people hear what you have to say. Okay. We've covered a lot of the different social medias and specific ways that you can go out and start to leverage those. So let me touch on one last thing. Traditional media. Traditional public relations media. Now, depending on where you live, I happen to be based in the San Francisco Bay Area. The ability for me to get noticed by the media is about this big. About that big. It's very difficult because I'm a big location and there's a lot of news to cover in my area. You might not live in a place like San Francisco or Los Angeles, but you might live in somewhere else that's a much smaller community, which means that television, radio, and newspaper are very interested in this term that I've coined that I'm going to share with you, the Kickstarter economy. If you reach out to your local newspaper, radio station, or television and talk to them about how you are helping bring the Kickstarter economy to your local economy, in today's day and age, that'll generate news. They're not really interested in you. They're interested in what you represent as a story to all of their backers, their listeners, their crowdfunding audience is one way to look at that. So craft your message and target it at the newspapers, local radio, and local television in such a way that they're drawn into what you're doing. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And it can be very powerful and help build an interest community where you live. Those are some of the things that you can do to actually reach out and find people and fans and slowly build up that fan base over time. You know, and one last one. Face-to-face. Chamber of Commerce's. They love to have these kind of things. I have Regina, who did her Kickstarter project, raised $10,000 by having an open house. They launched their project in the local paper, had an open house at the local bed and breakfast type little breakfast shop, and had people show up and donated $10,000. Be creative. Find ways to get people interested in your project, but don't try to shortcut it. Be genuine and authentic, use these social media tools, and take the time to really go and find this fan base, because after all, that's the point here, is to go find the people and not go looking for them in a random crowd.